Hello and welcome back. Now our top story this hour is that India has rushed through a presidential decree to scrap Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. This is the most far-reaching unilateral move by India since the Kashmir dispute was internationally recognized 70 years ago. More in this report.
Tensions escalated last week after India sent an extra 100,000 troops to occupied Kashmir. It is already the world's most militarized zone, with 700,000 Indian troops occupying the disputed Himalayan territory. New Delhi has also amassed weapons and bolstered its troops along the line of control. But it did not say why until Monday morning. Home Minister Amit Shah told India's parliament that a presidential decree has been issued that scraps Kashmir's special status as a disputed territory. He also moved a parliamentary resolution to revoke Article 370 of the Constitution, which defines Kashmir's special status.
Using the powers vested under the third section of Article 370, following the recommendation of the Parliament, President announces that starting from the day the President of India will sign on the declaration and the day when it will be published in the Government's Gazette, all the sections of Article 370 will cease to hold good, except for the Section 1 of the article.
Under the bill, occupied Kashmir will be turned into territories governed by New Delhi. Occupied Jammu and Kashmir will have a local assembly, but Ladakh will not. The presidential decree will be in effect for 2 months, giving the Bharatiya Janata Party government time to craft a two-thirds majority in parliament. The opposition Bahujan Samaj Party has already announced its backing along with Biju Janata Dal Party. Such small parties may hold the balance, whether by backing the government or abstaining from voting. But political leaders in Indian-occupied Kashmir have warned that the constitutional amendment would trigger widespread unrest. Former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti said the move marks the darkest day in India's democratic history. National Conference Vice President Umar Abdullah called the amendment unconstitutional and illegal and vowed to challenge it.
Or staying with the dispute in Kashmir, and Indian forces have placed leading politicians in occupied Kashmir under house arrest and cut off the region's telecom services. Ex-Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti and Omar Abdullah are among those detained. The leaders promised to resist any change to the disputed territory status. Speculation about India's intentions has been rife since it sent an extra 100,000 troops to the valley just last week. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called on India and Pakistan to show restraint. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has also urged the international community to take notice of the Kashmir situation. A curfew has been imposed across occupied Kashmir after Indian forces killed 12 unarmed youth over the weekend. A group of foreign diplomats has visited the line of control to view the impact site of India's use of cluster ammunitions. India used banned ammunitions across the line of control, resulting in civilian casualties. More in this report.
Use of illegal ammunition by Indian forces has attracted widespread condemnation from the world over. The foreign attachés said there is irrefutable evidence regarding the use of deadly bombs against civilians. The foreign attaché said there is irrefutable evidence regarding the use of deadly bombs against civilian population. They said Pakistan should take the matter to international fora.
We saw some munitions and some holes this way, and we hope that Pakistani authorities can make a decision in this case and the right decision.
The local population has also briefed the visiting diplomats about the situation in the area. The residents asked the international community to take notice of India's brutalities.
I want to tell that use of cluster bombs is a violation of Geneva Convention, and we strongly condemn. We demanded international institutions to take notice of the situation.
The International Convention on Cluster Munitions prohibits the use, transfer and stockpiling of cluster bombs.
Azad's Kashmir Prime Minister Raja Farooq has also stepped in and condemned the Indian move to scrap occupied Kashmir
after Eid to spread the message of Kashmir.
Now, in other stories, 43 people have been reportedly killed after an airstrike hit a wedding ceremony in southwestern Libya. Dozens more were injured in the airstrike, which local media reports blamed on Khalifa Haftar's eastern forces. The attack comes a day after Tripoli's UN-recognized government said it shot down a drone operated by opposition forces. UN envoy Ghassan Salameh earlier proposed a nationwide ceasefire for the Islamic festival of Eid al-Adha starting from August the 11th. The envoy also called for the resumption of negotiations between the two warring sides. Now, 19 people have been killed after a car blew up outside Egypt's National Cancer Hospital in Cairo. The health ministry says 30 others were injured after the blast ripped through the front of the building. The Interior Ministry says a car being driven against traffic on Cairo's riverfront exploded after colliding with 3 other vehicles. The Prosecutor General has ordered an immediate investigation into the cause of the blast. This comes during a revival of Egypt's tourist industry after years of stagnation caused by political turmoil and violence. Baghdad has denied a tanker seized by Iran for allegedly smuggling fuel in the Gulf. Iran claims the ship was detained while illegally carrying 700,000 litres of Iraqi diesel oil. Iraq's oil ministry says it doesn't export diesel. Iran's state media says the seized vessel has been moved to Bushehr and 7 crew members placed in detention. This follows Iran's detention of a British-owned tanker in the Strait of Hormuz last month in retaliation for the seizure of one of its ships off the coast of Gibraltar. Six ISIS militants have been killed in northern Iraq after a US-led coalition airstrike hit a village near the town of Mahmour. Iraq's Joint Operations Command says the military surrounded a group of ISIS militants outside a village. A military officer says the move is a part of the ongoing anti-ISIS operation by the Iraqi and US coalition. The United Nations and Yemen's Houthi rebels have agreed to resume delivery of food aid. The assistance was suspended for 6 weeks in rebel-controlled areas. The World Food Programme says the accord ensures the accountability of humanitarian operations inside Yemen. The Houthis say the agreement will guarantee effective distribution of food to those in need. The UN suspended food aid deliveries to rebel-held areas in June following accusations of misuse of aid meant for civilians. According to the UN, the suspension affected over 800,000 people. Responding to protests in Russia, Germany says a police crackdown on peaceful protesters violates international obligations and undermines the right to fair elections. Hundreds of people were detained at a rally against the disqualification of independent candidates from next month's local elections in Moscow. The German government says the arrests are out of proportion to the peaceful nature of the demonstrations. Berlin slammed what it called repeated interference by the government in the guaranteed right to peaceful assembly and freedom of expression. The Russian local election is seen as a dry run for a national parliamentary election in 2021. Authorities say opposition candidates have failed to collect enough genuine signatures to register for the vote. Candidates deny the claim and insist on taking part in the polls. Over 200 flights have been cancelled today in Hong Kong, paralysing the semi-autonomous territory. Protesters in the city have launched a citywide strike, crippling parts of the metropolis. Thousands of protesters have gathered in Hong Kong for the 9th straight week amid rising tensions with the government. Local media says 8 railway lines have been shut by protesters blocking the entrance to commuter trains. Addressing a press conference, Chief Executive Carrie Lam warned protesters of the dangerous path the demonstrations seem to be taking. She said the government will maintain law and order in Hong Kong and restore public confidence.
The great majority of Hong Kong people are now in a state of great anxiety. Some of them do not know whether they could still take some forms of public transport, while others are right now being blocked on the way to work.
7 Afghan policemen have been killed in southern Kandahar province after gunmen opened fire at a checkpoint. Now, this comes as the United States and Taliban negotiate a possible peace agreement in Qatar's capital, Doha. The spokesman for Kandahar's provincial police chief says the incident was an insider attack. He alleged 8 Taliban had infiltrated police ranks in the province's Shah Wali Court district. Insider attacks, often referred to as green on green, are a constant threat in Afghanistan for international and Afghan forces alike. In a first, the US has labeled yesterday's mass shooting in Texas as an act of domestic terrorism. The racist-motivated attack in El Paso left 20 people dead and 26 wounded. El Paso District Attorney Jamie Esparza says they will seek the death penalty for 21-year-old shooter Patrick Crusius. West Texas DA John Bash says the FBI will investigate accordingly.
So we're treating it as a domestic terrorism case, as the FBI special agent in charge said. They have activated the domestic terrorist fusion cell at the FBI, and so we're going to treat it that way going forward.
In Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge's chief ideologist and brother number 2, Nguyen Cher, has died at the age of 93. The reign of terror led by brother number 1, Pol Pot, left 2 million Cambodians dead. Most of the regime's victims died due to starvation and mass executions carried out between 1975 and 79. A UN-backed court found Kiir guilty of war crimes and sentenced him to life in prison last year. He was sentenced almost 4 decades after the Maoist regime was overthrown. Kiir and senior members of the ultra-Maoist group were put on trial in Cambodian courts. Currently, former President Khieu Samphan and leader Ken Gu-Av are serving life sentences after being convicted of genocide. Rising global temperatures are affecting mussel farmers in Albania. They say their harvests are shrinking each year. Albanian authorities are trying to tackle the problem, but are hindered by a lack of resources. More in this report.
Albania's mussel farmers could produce 6,000 tons of shellfish a year in the 1990s. That number has now shrunk to just 2,000. Farmers and climate scientists say rising global temperatures are to blame.
The mussel is the big loser of temperature increases because it cannot move to find another cooler place.
Microorganisms are thriving in Albania's waters because of climate change. They leave little oxygen for mussels. Consequently, they suffocate to death. Half of the young mussel farmers immersed in the water at the start of the summer this year have died.
Temperatures have reached nearly 30 degrees Celsius at the surface and even up to 1.5 meters deep, which is fatal for mussels.
A single prolonged heat wave can devastate harvest. Authorities are trying to control the problem by pumping cold water into mussel farms from nearby rivers. But this is expensive and resources are limited. As such, there is little that mussel farmers can do other than anxiously check weather forecasts.
Now, Egypt has revealed the initial restoration stages of the gold-plated coffin of Tutankhamun's tomb, which was discovered in 1922. The restoration is expected to take around 8 months. More in this report.
The restoration process began after the coffin was transferred to the new Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo from the Valley of the Kings in Luxor. The boy king's golden coffin will be displayed along with related artifacts at the new museum by the end of 2019.
The reason why you are here is to show you a unique historical artifact, not just for Egypt, but for the entire world. This piece was found during the discovery of the tomb in November 1922.
The gilded wooden coffin stands at 2.23 feet tall and is decorated with a depiction of Tutankhamun holding pharaonic symbols. Egyptian Antiques Minister Khalid Al-Anani says the move will boost tourism in the country.
Imagine how it is going to be during the inauguration day, when we will put on display more than 5,000 pieces of Tutankhamun for the first time, as the biggest number that we previously displayed was 2,000 pieces. In God's will, this will be an addition to the Egyptian tourism.
The announcement comes after the controversial sale of a 3,000-year-old Tutankhamun artifact in London for $6 million.
Now, American gardens are known for their neat landscaping, but now some people are opting for a more natural look. The new style also provides nesting space and nourishment to local wildlife. This report has more.
Tidy grass lawns and white picket fences have long been associated with the American dream. Now, a growing rewilding movement is trying to reclaim these spaces for nature.
We really wanted to try to figure out how to make a garden that was, in a sense, easy to take care of, but also things that native plants, things that grew in this area.
Rewilders also shun the use of pesticides, trying to work with local insect species rather than against them.
We had read about it. We also knew that, that putting chemicals on grass to try to keep it green seemed to be a futile process that wasn't good for kids playing on it or the environment or anything else.
Experts say the new trend can significantly slow down the loss of biodiversity.
More biodiversity of plants, we know it contributes to more biodiversity of insects, which can lead to more biodiversity of larger animals. Birds probably be the most interesting. The other part of that is that often looks messy.
Environmental scientist Chris Swan says rewilding can be the most transformative in inner cities. He went on to say that such efforts should be directed to all empty real estate in the US, which has increased over the years. 15% of the land in American cities is deemed vacant, an area roughly the size of Switzerland.
Now to business, and South Koreans have begun a widespread boycott of Japanese products amid a trade row. This comes after Tokyo imposed tighter controls on its exports to Seoul, on materials key to the South Korean tech industry. More in this report.
South Korean supermarkets and customers have expressed firm opposition to Japanese products. In Seoul supermarkets, the products have been removed from shelves and replaced with placards encouraging the boycott.
According to current statistics, more than 150,000 supermarkets have removed Japanese products out of their shelves.
Despite economic losses, many supermarkets hope that the South Korean government will also support the boycott. A Gallup poll showed 80% of South Koreans do not want to buy Japanese products.
I will not interfere with whether supermarkets sell Japanese products or not. I just won't buy.
Although a large number of South Koreans are taking part in the campaign, there are still voices supporting a reasonable solution to the current dilemma.
And now we'll look at the weather around the world. Well, that's the news for now, but don't forget you can stay tuned for further updates on Indus News. Bye-bye.